He has never lost a libel case and has represented names such as J-Lo, Britney Spears, Liam Neeson and a whole host. We'd be here forever if we mentioned them. International media lawyer Paul Tweed has built up an incredibly successful career over the past 30 years, specialising in defamation, privacy, piracy and intellectual property issues. And he joins us this morning. Paul, it's a great treat to have you here this morning. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Sinead.
But can we go back to the beginning, the mists of time? Yeah. Because you kind of almost ended up studying law as a bit of a, not a mistake, but it wasn't this great plan you had.
No, definitely not. And in fact, I started off, I was primarily a defence litigation operator where we were acting for insurance companies and doing the usual slippers and trippers, which still forms an important part of our business.
But it was your mum that got you into it?
Yes, she encouraged me. She was a legal secretary and I couldn't think what I wanted to do. I was never particularly bright at school and I just followed the flow, managed to scrape my way into Queen's University. Got my law degree, joined Johnson's in 1978, expecting to stay maybe 1 or 2 years and hopefully get a job in the Cayman Islands or somewhere exotic after that. But that never happened, of course, and I'm still at Johnson's 36 years later. And, you know, things really haven't changed that much.
You didn't end up in the Cayman Islands, but your life has changed considerably. I mean, so how do you go from doing the sort of law that you were doing to all of a sudden being at the other end of the phone from Britney Spears when somebody writes something about her that she doesn't like in the papers in the US? You know, how did that transformation take place? Well,
from my perspective, in the mid-1980s, there was a very well-known case where 2 senior lawyers were accused of fighting over the last chocolate eclair in a Hollywood cake shop. That's Hollywood, County Down, by the way. And it became a fairly...
So in Hollywood and County Down, 2 senior lawyers had a fight...
Were falsely accused.
Were falsely accused, okay.
Somebody had made up a story. Okay. Sunday World published it. And it's a case that should have been sorted out very early on, but things started to get a bit heated between the lawyers as well as the individuals accused. Eventually ran before a Belfast jury. 7 members of the public heard the case and awarded the lawyers £50,000 each, which in the mid-1980s was a lot of money then, still a lot of money now. But that sort of started me then on the media career, and then we sort of moved on. There was a case I brought for B.J. Eastwood against his former protege, Barry McGuigan, early 90s. Seems a long time ago now. I'm starting to get worried here. I'm feeling definitely very old this morning. And then I had a case then for Philadelphia attorney Jimmy Binns, who acted for the likes of Kevin Costner and Sylvester Stallone. He had a libel case against...
so was that the kind of... that was when the door opened into Hollywood?
The doors began to open then, and then I had a fairly interesting case for Liam Neeson in the late 90s.
Tell me about the Liam Neeson case, actually, because I actually hadn't been aware of it until I read it last night.
Well, basically, a number of newspapers wrongly alleged that his marriage had broken up. It was a case of mistaken identity. It was actually his late wife's sister was seen leaving a matrimonial lawyer's office, got it all wrong. Most of the papers, we got it sorted very amicably and very, very quickly, but one paper decided to take Big Liam on, big major mistake, and fought them. It actually went through the Court of Appeal at one point.
Wow.
Case was eventually settled before it actually reached the jury, and Liam donated the damages to the Leoma Fund at the time. I mean, again, and that's a very typical example where these international personalities aren't actually looking for the money per se. I mean, they just want to get their reputation vindicated quickly and effectively, and it's a question of just which court you elect to go before that can achieve that result best.
So you kind of developed a reputation then as Tweedle Fix It. You know, if something was printed that somebody didn't like, you were the go-to guy.
Yeah. Well, Tweedle Fix It still has the 3 a.m. sweats. You know, I wake up in the middle of the night and sometimes, you know, you worry, are things going to go the way you want?
Did you get those calls in the middle of the night, Paul, somebody's written this, I need you to fix it?
Well, you can probably tell from my eyes. I mean, I had sort of a 2 or 3 hours sleep last night, and it's one of the problems we have. I mean, where quite often I will be taking instructions from LA, but there will be maybe an attorney in LA, a publicist in New York, and the client could be in Australia touring or New Zealand. So you've got to line up your calls, and quite often the only time to do that is the early hours of the morning where you get everyone in sync. So it does require long hours. You know, here in Ireland, you know, normally we don't find out until the Friday evening that there's going to be a hatchet job in the Sunday newspaper. So, you know, my clients will get maybe a list of 20 questions, which they have to, maybe the journalist has had 2 weeks to prepare. they've got a couple
Probably
of hours.
longer.
Yeah, longer.
Yeah.
And answers, and that's so basically I would always delay opening the bottle of wine on a Friday night until that's all passed over. So it's normally Sunday morning before you can relax.
And we were having a chat there before we came on air about the people that you help and how you help them. And you were saying that print is kind of really not an issue anymore. It's online.
Yeah.
So who has come to you and said, look, I need help, this has been put online? You know, when we're talking big celebrities, who's asked for your help?
Well, you've got to remember now that most of the print media are now online. So
well, that's true. That's true.
So
yeah.
that the Mail Online, you know, would be the biggest website now in the world. And so naturally there's been a progression where about 80% of our cases now are against online publishers. Now that could be mainstream papers that have gone online, it could be bloggers, it could be, you know, people that have maybe set up shop in anywhere from the USA to Iceland, where they have a much more favourable First Amendment protection, and many of the ISPs now have got themselves located there so that basically we cannot sue them, or a client cannot sue them. So we find now that, you know, we're dealing more and more with people who have, you know, they've received threats online, they get abusive comments online, you have stalkers online. You've seen the situation recently where well-known celebrities perhaps foolishly published photographs of themselves, or didn't publish photographs, they stored photographs of themselves on the iCloud. And this is all the developing business, whereas 10 years ago, you know, we would have been taking action either against the print media or for them. I mean, I act for newspapers and broadcasters as well as against them. And I mean, the one thing I always point out to people, that the biggest group of clients that I act for are made up of journalists. People don't realise that.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, the international celebrities are down the list. They're great for publicity, but they don't form the...
But one of the big problems is that, particularly in Ireland, we have no legislation per se that will help people to secure any kind of conviction or to prosecute anybody. The UK is quite advanced, the US not so much, but in Ireland we've been quite remiss in this area.
It's definitely, compared to the UK where they have specific harassment legislation, it's much more effective. In Ireland we have to rely on Section 10 of the Non-Fatal Offences Against the Persons Act 1997, which is a mouthful in itself. But there are a few anomalies about that, because, you know, we argue that it applies to a tweet. You know, if somebody tweets something, even though it's not directed to you personally, if it is about you, then it should be actionable if it's abusive and whatever. But there's sometimes the Gardaí take the view that, you know, unless it is actually directed specifically at you, the threat is at you personally, then the tweet itself is not actionable. So it's very much, the law is in its, I suppose, its embryonic state, and it hasn't really moved with the times. I mean, you know, the battlefield now is online, but the law, I'm afraid, is still dealing with the print and broadcast media.
Paul, I could chat to you all day. You've had the most fascinating career and continue to do so. If somebody is at home and thinking, he's the man I need for a certain job, can they contact you?
Well, they can certainly contact me. I'm quite busy at the moment. I'm not necessarily looking for more work, but, you know, certainly if somebody's in trouble, we can certainly look at it for them.
Paul, thank you very much for chatting to me this morning. It's been very interesting indeed.